But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes!
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Welcome into Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. I'm Nicole Auerbach. He's Joshua Perry. It is lovely to be in person with you. And you're coming off a little bit of a life milestone, so we wanted to congratulate you on the birth of your daughter.
Thank you very much. No, it is good to be back here in studio, but I left a little bit of chaos in Columbus, Ohio. We just had baby girl, as you mentioned, Charlotte K. Perry.
Oh,
look at her.
Look at that
just
smush.
As beautiful as can be. So shout out to my wife, Madison. She's doing a great job. And then big brother James is adjusting right now to having a little sister at home.
So he has come to terms with it?
He is still in the coming to terms process, I would say. He was the first for everybody, first grandchild, first nephew, right? So, like, the world was about him, and now he's got to share the spotlight a little bit.
He certainly does. She's adorable. Congratulations. Right in time for football season. So very excited for her first college football season. It is time to put pen to paper and make some preseason predictions, Joshua.
Yeah.
We have spent all offseason working through some of our takes, trying to figure out how we feel about some of these teams. We are forced to make a preseason bracket, which will be funny to look back on.
It was funny last year.
It was very funny last year to look back on. We also bailed on Ohio State midseason,
right,
and they won the whole thing. So let's do it. Let's go on the record with our picks before the season. Then we're going to preview the big games of week one. It might be one of the best week ones that we've had
in recent memory, for
right?
sure, yeah.
Because nobody's even scheduling these types of games anymore.
Well, I know, and there was that whole conversation this summer too about we're just not going to schedule anybody tough, and then now it seems like you should.
I agree. All right, why don't we start with Heisman predictions?
Sure.
Okay, so this is actually one of the hardest things to do in the preseason because the preseason favorites are almost always wrong. So I want to read you the odds for Travis Hunter last year in the offseason, plus 4,000 on DraftKings. Even Joe Burrow, who was the quarterback of the greatest offense we've seen in college football history in the modern era, preseason odds of plus 4,000.
Right.
So you might need to look on the beat off the beat path.
Who's down there at plus 4,000 right now?
I don't know.
All right, so I'll give you mine right off the bat. I'm going with Garrett Nussmeier. He's second on the odds board right there. The reason why is because he is a veteran, very productive quarterback. He had over 4,000 yards a year ago, which was fifth nationally in college football. The issue with him, though, is he'll turn the football over, right?
Yes.
He's a guy who thinks he can make every single throw, will try to put it in dangerous places. That could also mean some really exciting plays and kind of those Heisman moment situations.
The Ole Miss throw?
Yeah.
That's the one everyone thinks of, right? That's
no doubt.
The best of Garrett Nussmeier.
So
I like on our chart that we only went to plus 1,800 because we're not even finding the likely Heisman winner, probably. Okay, well, I'm going to go with the odds-on preseason favorite.
Of course.
But I'm calling this a bold prediction. This was a bold prediction that I made on NBCSports.com because the preseason favorite never wins this thing. And the only reason that Arch Manning is the preseason favorite is because of the name,
sure,
right? He's not the established quarterback coming back to college football that typically is in this spot. But here's the thing. Texas is the preseason number one. If they end up doing what we think they're going to do, which is get to the playoff, be a top 4 seed again, go on a deep run, maybe win a national championship, you don't think people are going to vote for Arch Manning? He's going to be in all the highlights.
They 100% will. And we'll get into this when we talk about our game previews. Throwing to some really good wide receivers. Right? He's going to have his opportunities to be really productive, have those statement moments. Week one, he could have one of those moments. And then Texas, their schedule lines up too, where they've got some good challenges up there.
To me, I think when we talk about the Heisman, it's about visibility, right?
Sure.
Part of the reason that Travis Hunter was able to get there, and Ashton Genty too, coming into the season, we were like, all right, let's watch them. So every week, even week one, we were seeing highlights of them and what they were doing, even when they weren't playing interesting games. Arch Manning is going to be playing in interesting games.
He sure will be.
But he's also going to be everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how he'll handle it all, right? Because the expectation level for a guy who hasn't played that much is ridiculous. He also comes from a family who can probably coach him better than anybody else on how to be in the moment and just go out there and do his job.
Yeah, I was around him at SEC Media Days, and he is as chilled as one could possibly be in that setting. He's got the quick wit and the humor and the sarcasm like his uncles have. But it really does feel like he has handled the spotlight especially for the lack of starts and actual productivity, right? 61 completions to date.
It's crazy.
But he says all that, right? He's like, well, wait until I do stuff, guys. Like, stop, anointing me these things. Like, I need to prove it, rinse, do every day. And so I think he's going to live up to it. But I just think, as long as Texas has a good season, he's certainly going to be in New York.
I'm there with you. Like, if they have a good season and he doesn't look bad doing it, right? Like, it's not because it was in spite of him.
Despite of him,
right?
Yeah.
I think he'll be there too.
All right, let's do preseason coach of the year. This is a tough one too, because you have to tell me like the narrative of the season that delivers the coach of the year pick.
Yeah, that's the challenge in this one. I think the narrative of the season, one of them at least, is Penn State, and they have the best roster of James Franklin's tenure, right? They're a team that people believe can win a national title this year. And I'm picking him because I think that they'll do all the things that people are saying. James Franklin, I think, gets a little bit of a bad rap because he loses those big games. But I'm one of those guys who also never is like, oh, James Franklin should win that game, right? Like, they're always the underdog in those games that he doesn't get credit for. I think he starts to turn the narrative on that. I think they start to win those games, and ultimately he's going to be coach of the year because he lives up to the preseason hype that they have for him.
If they win, they'd have to win multiple top 5 games, right? That's his record. 1-15 against top 5 teams. I think if you start to shift that, so the Oregon game, that'll likely be a top 5 matchup. And Ohio State, I think, is bigger. That's the one because they've been kind of the nemesis. They've been the one that's
and they got to go on the road to do that one too.
Yes, like that one, I think he'll get a ton of credit if they win that game. So I'm with you because I think this award is about coaches doing things you didn't think they could do.
Yes.
Which is why you often see like a quick turnaround or like, Curt Cignetti at Indiana last year winning this because, it's best season in program history. It's the losingest program ever in college football.
And it's like Urban Meyer never really being a coach of the year, guys.
Nick Saban, really? Like, how much did he win any?
I don't know.
Even know.
But like the expectation was that they were going to be good and they always lived up to it. So you don't give that guy the coach of the year.
Exactly. And so I went with more the way that voters tend to think about this for my coach of the year pick. I've got Brett Bielema for Illinois. Spoiler alert, we're going to see our brackets in just a second. He's in there. Illinois is in there. They are this year's Indiana in my mind, aka like the team that schedule kind of sets up nicely for them, and they have a turnaround, right? Now, they had 10 wins last year, but only 5 2 years ago. So that program growth and development is exactly the kind of narrative that voters like for coach of the year. And it's Illinois. If Illinois makes the playoff with so many returning players, returning quarterback, the continuity of the coaching staff, we'll be talking about them all season long and about the job that Brett Bielema did in his second stint in the Big Ten. So that is where I come down on this because I really like that team. I've spent a lot of time around them in the offseason.
I mean, you and I have both talked about how much we respect Brett Bielema. The thing for me is this feels like a good pick because we've seen him do really well as a coach in this conference. He's won with less before in the Big Ten, so it wouldn't be a shock, but he would also be up against a lot of the odds just in terms of the fact that it's Illinois. They're not going to be nearly as talented as some of the top teams in the country. He can be the difference for why they can make a big step, and ultimately he can earn Coach of the Year.
And look at the schedule, right? So they do not play Ohio State. They do not play they do play Ohio State, but they avoid Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan.
Ain't bad.
And then Duke's your toughest non-conference game. Like, if they handle that in week 2, Indiana in week 4, kind of smooth sailing from then on. You could be 11-1 and beat Indiana level and make the playoff comfortably or in the last at-large spot.
It'll be interesting to see that.
Okay, so we've teased it before. We've teased that we did full-on preseason brackets. They're not going to be right. Although if they are, we should probably buy a lottery ticket. I don't know. We have some similarities in here, but I want to start with yours. Let's look at how you see the college football playoff playing out.
Yeah, it's this is the hardest thing that I do at any point in the year. It's also the only time anybody asks me to write anything all year long.
We love that.
I appreciate
a byline for Joshua Perry.
A byline for old JP. All right, so conference champs, I went with Texas, Penn State, Clemson, and Arizona State for the Power Four, and then Tulane in the group of 6 there. And then you go with the at-larges. You get Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Oregon, Nebraska, and Notre Dame. So I think Penn State, Texas, and Clemson are 3 of the best teams in the country. I said they're going to win their conference. I think they easily take up those top 3 seeds, but we have straight seeding this year. Who goes in at 4? Georgia, to me, is one of the more unique teams because I feel like we're not necessarily talking about them the way that we've talked about Georgia for the last half decade. And I think they can make a rebound. I think they're going to run the football better. I think that they're going to have a good defense this year. And ultimately, Kirby's going to find a way to turn this into a nobody believes in us type of situation. Ohio State's going to be right there. And I put them, Alabama and Notre Dame, kind of in the same category of teams with some coordinator turnover, teams that are breaking in new quarterbacks, but teams that I think are really, really talented and are going to be safely in the college football playoff. Oregon's one for me that becomes intriguing because Dan Lanning has this burn still from what happened in the college football playoff last year.
When we asked him at Big Ten Media Days, hey, look, how do you kind of put that in the past and move on? He's like, no, you wake up and you think about it every day.
That.
And he says he needs to see a therapist about it.
Yep.
True.
Probably.
But that is also what you have to do, right? If you're trying to break through. He's trying to do kind of what we were talking about Penn State, right? Like,
yes,
win a national title, prove that you belong in that top group. You can't do it unless you win the game.
That's exactly it. And I think that mentality right there is going to have them right back in the college football playoff. They've had some turnover with players, so there will be a question about exactly how talented they are, but I do think that they have what it takes. LSU, another one of those teams, might have some bumps, but I think they're going to be good enough to make it in there by the end of the year. Arizona State, it's like the question of who do you pick out of the Big 12, and I like them because I like Sam Leavitt. I like them because I like Kenny Dillingham. I like them because they have a lot of returning production. What I don't like is Cam Scatterbo is not there, and that kind of scares me a little bit, and that conference is insane. I just don't know how you actually pick that one. And then for the last couple spots, my dark horse, the Indiana of this year for me is Nebraska, where you've got Matt Rule with that year 3 jump that he likes to take. Dylan Raiola coming back with another year of experience under his belt. Dana Holgorsen, that nobody's really talking about.
This is a great call.
I mean, one of the top coordinators probably in the country, right?
He kind of snuck that in, too, by hiring him like as a consultant, analyst towards the end of the year. You got to jump on the carousel.
Yeah.
And then Dana Holgorsen stays.
I mean, it's awesome.
I'm with you.
And their
I think
schedule
that's
sets
underrated.
up, too, by the way. I think that they've got one of the more manageable schedules. And then I picked Tulane here kind of to go against the grain a little bit. A lot of people are picking Boise State. I think they actually have an opportunity to beat some Power 4 teams in the non-conference, and that'll set them up. And as you and I well know, you're kind of looking at the Mountain West. You're kind of looking at the American when you're picking your Group of 6 champ.
That's correct. And I think that those two leagues are trying to position themselves as like our champion should get that spot every single year. You also are 1 year away from the new Pac-12 forming. So Boise State's still in the Mountain West. Spoiler, they're my Group of 6 champion because I believe that the experience that they had and what they're going to have in the Mountain West, like I think, despite the shaky performance from UNLV in week 0, I think
Hold on. Are we surprised that Alex Orji had the day throwing the ball that he did?
No. That team, by the way, is like kind of the Lost Boys.
Yes,
like, it's all of these players.
All of these
guys. I can't believe they're
it's
here.
last chance you.
Yeah, kind of.
Like that's really what it
for
feels
Dan
like.
Mullen in year 1. But again, I just think like level of competition in the Mountain West. I think they'll be prepared. I think obviously losing Ashton Genty is huge for the way that they were winning games. But I think they have the other pieces, especially in the pass game, that they'll be able to get there. So let's look at my bracket. We felt pretty similar about our conference champions, which is no surprise because we talk every week, and I feel like that always ends up happening. I have Clemson here as the number 1 overall seed and my only ACC team because I don't trust Miami. I don't think the Carson Beck experiment is going to, elevate them to CFP levels. But what I think with Clemson and the way that their non-conference shakes out, we're going to talk about the LSU game, but obviously they also play South Carolina. It's a top 15 team in the preseason. I think they're going to be really well positioned because I don't think they're going to be challenged much in the ACC.
Agreed.
So I think they'll be challenged in the non-conference if they split those games or win both to be in position for this number 1 overall seed. I like Texas. I told you, I think the Arch Manning thing is going to work. I think he's going to be a Heisman finalist. So therefore, and I think also they have defensive stars at all 3 levels.
Their defense, I don't think is getting enough preseason hype. That could be the best defense in the country this year.
I agree. And I want to get your thoughts on Anthony Hill Jr. a little bit later when we preview the game against Ohio State. So again, I think we see a lot of the top 4 type teams similarly. I've also got, I struggled with figuring out the order of the teams in the Big Ten and the SEC.
100%.
Because, like, you know, again, I feel good about Penn State, and they're running back, like they brought everybody back. And I think that the receivers they picked up in the portal, like I think there's going to be significant improvement in the pass game, and they'll actually be able to throw to receivers this year. But you know, yeah, Ohio State, you know, they're going to be young. They're going to be inexperienced at places, but they're so talented that I just penciled them in as the second best team, which, by the way, I'm kind of assuming that Penn State beats them to set this up,
kind of
that
where
they would
I'm
be
at too.
ranked ahead of them. But then again, I'm with you on Oregon, Dan Lanning. I also really like with Dante Moore, did something that not a lot of quarterbacks are doing. He had starting experience at UCLA, and he picked a school where he would sit for a year. So he sat behind Dylan Gabriel, one of the most experienced quarterbacks we've ever seen in college football, who, by the way, was on the heels of one of the most experienced quarterbacks we've ever seen in college football, in Bo Nix. So it's new. It's going to be different. You don't have that type of veteran experience, but you have someone who's been in the system and been in that quarterback room for a full year. So I like them. They're always going to have dudes. They're always going to recruit at, you know, kind of the SEC level.
Right. And they're edgy too.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have them in there. And then, like I said, Illinois, I really like them. The schedule works out really well for them. They return almost everybody. When you look at my bracket, I leaned in on the returning players. And this has been something that we haven't really talked a lot about the last few years. It's all been about transfers and hitting on portal guys and all of that. But this year, you have the unique situation where people are really high on Clemson and Penn State because they're bringing back so many players. But let me just tell you this. So this is CBS Sports counting because, again, starters are kind of hard to tell, like, you know, how many games you have to start. Arizona State returns 17 starters. Illinois, 16. Clemson, 16. Alabama, 14. Penn State, 14. So that's what drove me in my decisions of who I trusted and where I felt good about them. And then LSU, I believe, will hit with their portal additions. You know, Brian Kelly has talked about believing that this team is championship caliber.
Oh, this is a big year
on
for
the
him.
Defensive side. It is a big year for him. But if their defense is that improved and they hit on the portal, you know, Garrett Nussmeier certainly will be in New York City. Like, that will be a team that does take that step. But again, I just couldn't figure out what order I felt about these SEC teams. But I do think Kalen DeBoer reunited with Ryan Grubb without Jalen Milroe, and kind of he was up and down at times. Like, I think it's going to work. I think they're going to be in the playoff. They'll be back to where we're used to seeing Alabama.
That Alabama thing is so intriguing to me. They're one of the teams that I've got circled just to see what they look like all year long. I actually talked to somebody down there this past week, and I'm like, how you guys feeling? And he just said national championship. Right.
Really?
And I don't think if you would ask that same question to them a year ago that he would have said the same thing. They were up against Nick Saban leaving, and that timing was weird, and they were trying to
just keep players.
They were just trying to have a roster. And I think this year they were really able to lean in to program building. And you mentioned it. They've got a lot of great players coming back. And I think that they believe that this is a year they can win the title.
Okay, well, I think they're going to really see that step forward, which, again, like coming off a 9-3 year, you don't need to be that much better to get back to the playoff, but it was the way they lost those games.
Yeah, they were ugly.
Lopsided nature of, like, the Oklahoma game. That was a team that had no offense. It was rough. So they're one of the teams I'm most interested to see in action once we actually get there here with week 0. But I believe in them. I buy them. I also took Arizona State as my Big 12 champ, even though it felt like throwing darts. Like, I think
it's exactly what it was.
The more interesting pick that I almost did was Texas Tech.
I wasn't doing it.
To see if the money that they threw at that roster was going to work. But yeah, so I was tempted, but again, returning production, I went with that. I think you and I like the same teams, as evidenced by, like, the way that they progressed through the bracket. We have the same national championship matchup. But yeah, I'm going to Clemson. Again, development that Dabo did. He dipped his toe into the portal, but it's still built on developing within the program. I think Cade Klubnik is the best quarterback coming into the season, returning quarterback. And then they have dudes up front that are going to be NFL problems.
They do.
For teams. So I just think that combination is going to work. It's kind of the way that we've seen Clemson win a lot in the past.
No doubt. And I've got a Clemson-Penn State national championship game. I went with Penn State for mine. And it's similar things, right? Like, they've got the quarterback coming back. They've got the ground game that we believe is going to be – their offensive line is going to be great. They got 2 great running backs. They went to the portal. They got the wide receivers. I also think that they're really strong on defense. But the interesting thing about us picking those 2 teams is people will talk about Dabo like he's stuck in 2016 and he can't win right now. And James Franklin can never win. That's what people always say about him. And I look at the last few national champions where Ryan Day couldn't win the big one. And then you go back with Michigan, and for the longest time, Jim Harbaugh couldn't get them over the hump. And then you even look at Kirby in the beginning part of his tenure at Georgia. People were like, yeah, he's got good teams, but he'll never be able to beat Alabama, and they'll never be able to win a title. And I think I'm done with this whole, oh, they can't do it, or they've lost their fastball, whatever the case is. I'm going to wait and see, and to your point, two very talented veteran rosters. I believe in these teams to be able to make a run.
I say this all the time, and it's worth repeating. You can't do something until you've done it.
Right.
So I understand that people might not pick Penn State because they're worried about that 1-15 against the top 5. But these picks in the preseason are based on that they're going to break through.
Right.
That they're going to figure out how to close that gap. They went out and got Jim Knowles. I think they have two of the most intriguing coordinators in the country. They're certainly spending like they want to contend for a national
two chaotic coordinators.
Yes, but they're working together. We were there in the spring. They're really like helping each other because you have the defensive coordinator who is the one stopping from Penn State from achieving what it wanted, right? Of like beating Ohio State, being in the upper echelon, winning a Big Ten title, being in the playoff for years. And now he's telling Andy Kotelnicki and James Franklin, here's how I did it.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to figure out what to do. And obviously the receiver is a huge part of it.
Doubt.
So you have to, think that that's going to improve and not be one-dimensional like they were last year at times with just like Tyler Warren is the offense. Mm-hmm. You have to trust that Drew Aller is not going to make a mistake in a big moment.
And that he's not going to get down if he does make a mistake, because I think that was part of his problem too.
Yes, but last year you did see a lot of growth with him of like he was a much more emotional leader and a driving force in a lot of their games. So I think that they're going to do the thing that people wonder if they'll ever going to do.
Yeah.
And like you said about Clemson, the interesting thing about their narrative is the state of the game right now. And again, they are a little bit in the portal, but it's still development. And we're in an era now where people are really hoping with the rev share cap, with the way that you have to kind of, be strategic and figure out player value, positional value, that retention is going to be more important than the portal moving forward. So it feels like, is Clemson's model actually going to come back around?
Yeah, I mean, it could. And I think part of the problem with their model was that they weren't going to the portal, but they were just losing a ton of guys, right? So
right, and they weren't addressing like their weaknesses that when they would lose guys too.
Yeah, and so you had a thin roster. But I think the idea that Dabo always had, that we want our guys that we have identified, that we develop, has always been a thing that coaches wanted. Everybody else was just like, well, if my roster's leaving, I got to bring guys in on the
or like,
the
we don't have a receiver. We need an immediate receiver.
100%.
Which, and again, that part you should do.
Yes.
But it was kind of like, put up against like a Florida State that was like really leaning into the portal every year.
What are they going to be?
We're going to find out soon, right? They open with Alabama.
Yeah.
So we're going to see, what their improvement is. I think they upgraded at both coordinator positions.
Real quick before we get off of this, I do think one of the intriguing things is how you and I both through this bracket viewed the ACC and the Big 12.
Did you also have Arizona State losing in the first round?
Well, did I? Yes, I did, to Alabama.
That's what
Yeah, and so like for me, the ACC feels like Clemson's what you trust. You mentioned you don't trust Miami. I don't either. And then the Big 12 is kind of, and the reason I mention this is all these playoff models that have been tossed around. I've been saying this from the jump. If I were the Big 12 in the ACC, I would be pounding the table for the auto bids, because you could have a one bid conference in a lot of years.
Well, and it's the way that it's playing out in our minds is super top heavy in the ACC. And then in the Big 12, that everyone's going to beat up on each other too much, so you're not going to have an obvious second choice. And I think that is a very realistic possibility, like moving forward. Yeah. Because it's hard to imagine that there's going to be powerhouses separating in the Big 12 the way it's currently constituted. Right. And then in the ACC, I mean, the ACC's dream is to have Clemson, Miami, Florida State.
But when are they ever all good at the same time?
2 or 3, good at the same time. But that is a very interesting point. And we like Notre Dame, I have in here, despite, again, they're going to have a new starting quarterback. We'll get to that in our game preview as well. But they're primed to make the playoff every single year.
For sure.
And we learned that in year one. It's a lesson that we do need to kind of remind ourselves. Like, you can lose to Northern Illinois and still make the playoff comfortably and host a game in the playoff. So it just feels like this thing, especially now, they could even get a top 4 seed and a bye. Like, it's set up for them to just be penciled in regardless. That takes away a spot for a potential second-at-large team for the ACC or the Big 12. One more thing before we get off our preseason brackets. Neither of us have Texas winning it.
Yeah.
A lot of people buy in and think that this team, the way it's constituted, will win a national championship. It's hard to do like preseason number 1 all the way through.
Right.
But why don't you think that they're going to be the ones lifting the trophy?
So I think that they absolutely could be, right? I just mentioned, we'll talk about it when we get to the preview, but love the defense. The offense has weapons all over the place, all those different things. I think with their schedule, it's going to be really hard to not feel beat up by the end of the college football season, right? Like, you can make an argument that Clemson, the way that things are set up for them, will feel much fresher in the postseason. You can make an argument that Penn State, where they've got to play Ohio State and they've got to play Oregon, but you look at the rest of that thing, they're not going to feel the same way that the guys down in Texas would. And I know that the SEC people love talking about how their schedule is set up and everything, and there's a little bit of truth to that, and I think where it takes the biggest toll is how the bodies feel after playing that schedule.
It's a good point. And I think that is something that we have talked about a lot in basketball because the Big Ten teams, they have this drought of winning a national championship. And it's like, well, it's so physical during conference play. That could certainly be a factor here. We're also, by the way, picking non-SEC teams to win a national title for the 3rd straight year. You're, in fact, picking Big Ten, 3 in a row for the Big Ten.
Little hat trick.
Yeah, which, the SEC, like Paul Feinbaum said he's going to leave the country or something if the SEC doesn't win a title this year.
I know that's your man. Will you help him pack?
All right, let's get to week 1. It is a loaded slate. Like, this is awesome. This is one of the best opening weekends that we've had. Usually there's like one decent game.
I'm so excited.
We almost got a 1-2 matchup in Texas and Ohio State. So let's start there. It's 1 versus 3.
Yeah.
Game is at the Shoe. Ohio State favored by 1.5 points. Over under 47.5. It is a rematch of last year's national semifinal game, but these teams are totally different.
Very.
2 new quarterbacks. That's what everyone's really been focused on because it's Arch Manning's team now. Right. We did see him start a couple times when Quinn Ewers was hurt last year, but this is the real experience we're gonna have this season. The reins are his. He's gonna be the one figuring out what this offense looks like, how his legs are used, right? Because I think Quinn Ewers, had he been healthier, would have been used a little. They would have used his legs a little bit, but he was just banged up the entire time. Yeah. The defense is phenomenal for Texas, and I think Anthony Hill Jr. You can make the case he's going to be the second best defender on the field behind Caleb Downs at Ohio State. But Ohio State breaking in a lot of new players too was one of the things when I visited with Ryan Day back in the spring was, okay, so everybody comes back, which is great because then you have a super veteran team and you go and chase this goal, you win a national championship, but it does kind of reset where guys that you thought were going to play last year, like in your mind and your calculations over 4 years, didn't. So now you're a little more inexperienced, but it's a trade-off. I was like, it's a trade-off you take. He's like, oh, of course, but it's a really good point that there are some guys that probably would have gotten a lot more experience last year had not everybody come back. So how do you see this game? I mean, again, we're really high on Texas's defense. Ohio State's, though, going to have the best offensive player in the country in Jeremiah Smith, best defensive player in the country in Caleb Downs.
Wild.
So how can they impact the game? Can Julian Sayin get the ball to Jeremiah Smith?
So I think we should start there. That's actually one of the biggest things I'm curious about because last year when these teams played in the semifinal, I think everybody forgets that Jeremiah Smith only had 3 yards in the game. It was
they did not want him to beat them.
No, I mean they rolled coverage over his way, right? They were able to find 2 or even 3 bodies to get over top of Jeremiah Smith, and they're like, we're not going to let him beat us. And they've got the same staff coming back. Pete Kwiatkowski, their defensive coordinator, does a great job with those plans. So I think that is one of the big questions: is does Jeremiah have a bigger impact than he did in the last matchup? And if he doesn't, then the question becomes, where do they get the plays? Because Travion Henderson, huge play before halftime, right? Jack Sawyer scoop and score. And I know you don't take any plays out of the game, but if you take those out the game, this feels much stickier for Ohio State a year ago.
The game did feel that way.
It did.
For a lot of it.
No, it was a slog for both teams.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a hard-fought game that was really close, except for when you look at the scoreboard because of a couple big plays.
And those guys are in the NFL?
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah, they're all gone.
So that'll be a curious thing for me. The other thing I think that I'm looking at when it comes to Ohio State's offense is their ability to get it started with the run game. because I think it's going to help Julian Sayin out if they can run the football some. But you're looking at a running back room that is completely different. The offensive line that's reworked, but I think is going to be really good. Do they have a strong run game? Brian Hartline calling plays, right? Like, is he a guy who's worked with wide receivers, played the position, but is he a guy who has the answers in the run game for when they need to pivot out of some of their base run game? So
it's also his second time elevated to this role.
Right.
I know Ryan Day said he's been spending a little bit more time on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, it's his background.
Sure.
But also, I think he feels like, he's good on the defensive side. Like the transitions, the coordinator changes, like it's fine.
Yeah.
But Brian Hartline, like, tell me what is going to be different this time. Like, what he talked about being more ready for this role now. So what does that look like?
Well, I think the first time around, he was really approaching it from a guy who had seen the game of football from the periphery, from the outside. And in the time that he spent from going back to just coaching wide receivers, I think he committed himself to learning about run game, offensive front, and how all of that plays in to the pass game. I think he spent time learning about defensive fronts and how you want to attack those as well. I think that's one of the biggest things that is underrated about coordinators is you have to become an expert in every part of offensive and defensive football, regardless of which side you're coordinating, so you can be able to best attack. That's the biggest difference there. But again, facing Texas in week 1 is not the place to like figure out how to be a play caller, right? Like
right.
It's going to be tough.
With a new quarterback. And a new run game.
The Ohio State offense, I think, has some questions. I have questions about the defense, but not as many. My biggest question is like, how much of this is going to be Matt Patricia's defense?
I mean, the way that Ryan Day talks about the transition and how the players have like just glommed onto him, it's really encouraging, I think, if you're an Ohio State fan. But yeah, like what does it look like? What elements from his NFL experience are coming out to play? And again, personnel, like you always have talent, but you are going to be more inexperienced at certain spots. And how does that play out? That's why like I love week 1 in this year, because you are going to learn so much about the questions that you have for all of these top teams, right? For Texas and where they're breaking in, or, okay, can the running back stay healthy this year? So what does the run game look like with Arch Manning, and who are going to be his targets and favorite targets? You're going to get answers because they're playing in such a high-level competition. These teams are still going to look very different. They both could certainly make the playoff. We both have them making the playoff.
No
so
doubt.
It's not like make or break for your season, but you're going to learn so much about these teams. Let's talk about the game that would be the headliner, if not for the game in Columbus, and that's the Battle of Death Valley. Like whoever gets to call.
Are we gonna pick a winner for this?
Okay, all right.
I feel like we should.
Okay, go.
Are we picking against the spread?
Yes. So Ohio State favored by 1.5 points.
Okay, well I'm picking Texas to win the game. So.
I also think I'm picking Texas to win the game.
So I didn't talk necessarily like a ton about Texas right there. That defense is going to be ridiculous. The continuity on that staff, I think, is crazy. But their offense with the wide receivers and that running back room is super underrated for Texas.
It's because everyone was banged up last year.
The only question is the offensive line, replacing 4 or 5 starters. But like it just feels like they're in a better spot to play this game in week 1.
I agree, and I think Steve Sarkisian, creativity, the play calling, just like the way that he moves guys around with a quarterback who's been in his quarterback room for 3 years, right? That's where
huge.
Yes. So I also will take Texas to win.
Okay.
So let's go to Death Valley.
Yeah.
Battle for Death Valley. The one who gets to say that theirs is the real Death Valley. Okay. LSU versus Clemson, another top 10 game. Clemson favored by 3.5 points, over under 57.5. So expecting to be a little bit more high scoring. Here's a great stat for you. This is actually like a focal point of SEC Media Days. LSU is 0-5 in season openers since they won the national championship.
Yeah.
So not all Brian Kelly, but Brian Kelly has not won an opener there.
Well, I mean, the narrative, like, of the Brian Kelly tenure too, like after week 1, we're like, oh my God, should we sound the alarms down there in Baton Rouge? Like,
and they haven't really had the type of season they want to.
I mean, they had that one where they made it to the SEC championship, and then like after that, it's kind of been like they have their moments.
They're expecting national championships though,
as they should.
Yeah,
as they should.
The last 3 coaches got them.
So I'm curious about that trend because I'm a little bit of a believer in it. I think there's something about the way that Brian Kelly does training camp and how he prepares his team early in the year, why this is a real stat and why I know it's not all him, but like there's something to that. are they better on defense? Right? Like, that's the biggest question. Blake Baker comes in, like, everybody's excited about that. Are they going to take that big step forward? Are they going to be able to run the football? Right? For LSU, we know that the pass game is going to be there. The run game was a problem for them a year ago. So those are big questions to answer in week one. And I look at Clemson, and I don't necessarily have those same questions. I think their defense is going to be stout. You talked about the NFL guys that they have. They're with you. That wide receiver room for Clemson is another one that I don't think is getting enough credit. Nationally, those guys are going to be really good. It feels to me like it lines up for Clemson to be the team that I believe that they can be earlier in the year. I'm picking them in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Woods and TJ Parker are guys that, like, the NFL guys are going to be talking about and watching in this game. So that's what I actually really love, that you have an experienced quarterback dealing with Clemson's pass rush and defensive front in general, because, again, I think we'll learn a lot about Garrett Nussmeier, and these are all players that are going to be playing on Sundays. I think it's actually the best quarterback matchup that we might have all season, with Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier. Just with how I feel about them and what their ceilings appear to be, but just what they've done in their college careers. I really like both of these teams. But, you know, again, Clemson returning 16 starters. I don't think they have to win this game. Again, I went through their schedule. Like, I don't think they're going to be challenged all that much in the ACC. They've got the South Carolina game at the end of the year, which they dropped last year, which was part of South Carolina's playoff case. But I also feel like the continuity and the fact that LSU's biggest questions outside of just the general defense are, hey, are they hitting on the portal? You know, they spent a lot of money to try to address their needs. Are they going to work? And also, how healthy is Garrett Nussmeier? He's dealing with something during training camp. So, again, if this game is played, you know, on October 1st, I think I might pick it differently.
I agree with that statement.
But so now, you're going to pick Clemson?
Yes.
Are you picking them?
I think they're going to cover.
You think they're going to cover?
Yeah.
Okay. Man, I'm so tempted on this because I think this game is going to be really close.
It's the 3.5 is like
3.5 is really tough.
It is, because you could see like a walk-off field
You know what?
goal.
I'll be look, we're not going to pick all the same picks.
All right, good.
Even though we have too much groupthink from spending the entire summer talking college football together, I'm going to take LSU to cover.
All right.
So, okay, I don't know if I feel great about that, especially with their I'm looking at that 0-5 record again in the season openers.
It could be one of those situations where, like,
heartbreaking loss right at the end.
walk-off field goal, like, you know, they're leading by a point or whatever.
Or they messed something up at the end, like missed, you know, extra point, or, you know, something's not set. Okay. They do have some heartbreaking ones. So, I'll feel a little bit better.
This is going to be absolute cinema. I can't wait.
Oh, God, I'm going to be a mess when Clemson wins by 4. Okay, let's talk about the third big game of the weekend, the Sunday night matchup. Notre Dame versus Miami. Notre Dame favored by 2.5 points. Game is at Miami. Over under 49.5. This game is at Hard Rock Stadium. And it's almost not getting talked about enough because I think it's really interesting and on par with these other two games. It's also a top 10 game. Miami is number 10 in the preseason poll.
The issue is everybody's looking at the college football schedule and they don't turn the page to Sunday.
Yeah,
and so they just like completely don't even see it up there.
That is probably part of it. You've also got new quarterbacks here. Like, that's kind of the theme, right? All of these, you know, blue blood programs breaking in first-year starters, or at least first-year starters for them. Carson Beck, Miami, and Notre Dame, it's CJ Carr. Before we get to your thoughts on them, got some comments from Marcus Freeman. Finally spoke to the media about the decision. Now, we know it was a really close competition with him and Kenny Minchey. And I think there were a lot of people who were really surprised, especially like the beat writers and some of the people who were talking to people in camp, because I think they almost felt like Minchey was even leading the competition. Marcus Freeman said that they both improved in training camp and both found ways to elevate, but he needed to make a decision. He told them that he's going to need both of them and they need to be mature enough to handle that decision, understand that they're chasing their full potential, no matter if you're named the starting quarterback or you're the backup quarterback. You have to continue to work. That's it. That's not the ultimate goal, is to be named starter. It's to be the best version of you, and both of you have gone to work. Now, he said that he picked CJ Carr, talked about the leadership capabilities and, you know, walking into this environment at Miami in week 1, you know, kind of like just taking the reins of the offense. And I think that's why he named the starting quarterback when he did, to try to give like almost 2 weeks
for sure
to build that leadership capability, knowing that you're the starter. He said that Kenny Minchey was disappointed, but after a day or so, he knew that he, you know, could kind of come together and be a better version of Kenny. He's mature and using this as a motivator, but he will put the work in and be ready when his number is called. And I knew that when I made the decision. So it almost feels like he thought Kenny Minchey could handle that position better.
Yeah.
Of being the backup or have packages and need to plug into a game.
So I think that there's an interesting psychology of that. I remember in 2015 we had JT Barrett and Cardale Jones both coming back, and Cardale got the pill to start the season. And I think part of that was if Cardale wouldn't have got the start, there was a higher likelihood that he could have checked out. Maybe his preparation wouldn't have been as dialed in than JT Barrett, who was going to come to work and do everything that he needed to do. So I think there's part of that. But there's this interesting, on the field aspect of maybe Notre Dame looked at their offense and they said we were too reliant on a quarterback who has really good legs, and we were too reliant on a run game, and we didn't do enough to try to challenge on the outside. And with CJ, we can do that. But we always know if we want to throw the change up, we can go to Kenny.
True.
And so maybe there was part of that comes along with it too.
Or just that you have Jeremiah Love.
Right.
And so even in these big games, because obviously Miami and then A&M at home, there's not going to be a ton that's asked of the quarterback and their arm.
No doubt.
You're going to be putting the running backs, especially Love, in position to kind of set the tone for this game. Your defense is going to be good. So maybe there's some of that, and you just believe that over the course of the season, CJ Carr has a higher ceiling and that he'll get you where you ultimately need to be. This was also a big deal for Marcus Freeman not to go in the portal, to have the homegrown quarterback. No, either way, right? But, CJ Carr was looked at as the quarterback of the future for this program. Lloyd Carr's grandson, we know the pedigree. So that is something that I'm really interested to see, how much they actually throw it. What are they going to ask of him against a Miami defense that, speaking of defenses that need to get better, that defense cost them a trip to the college football playoff a year ago.
100%. They wasted Cam Ward.
Wasted him.
With an awful defense. So they get Heatherman, who is coming from Minnesota, and he, to me, can be that difference maker. I'm just not sure that it's turn around immediately and that it happens in week one. I have a lot of questions about Miami generally, the defense, as you mentioned, which I think they're going to be phenomenal up front.
I think they're going to obviously take a big step.
I think they should take a step, but again, is it one of those things where you have a couple bad plays in a row and it's oh, here we go again? I've seen that happen. And then offensively, again,
Carson Beck experiment.
I think their offensive line is going to be good.
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to run it a little bit. But Carson Beck, the last time we saw him, did not even look like himself. We thought this dude was the #1 overall pick, the best quarterback in college football, and he looked insanely bad.
Speaking of preseason Heisman favorites, he was one of them last year. Okay, so let me give you the stats. 2 years ago, when he had a great year at Georgia, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Again, coming into last year, you're thinking, okay, that's the baseline for Carson Beck. Last year, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 9 over a 4-game stretch in the middle of the season. It was, and they were really bad, a lot of them. Sometimes awful. You're okay, it's not the quarterback's fault. A lot of those were quarterback's fault.
100%. And
he wasn't seeing the field well.
Again, his wide receivers weren't catching anything
also
anyway.
True.
So
also
it
true.
was everything bad that could have happened to a quarterback. He was chasing ghosts. So, his supporting cast wasn't that good.
So are they going to be better this year? Is a better version of Carson Beck going to show up at Miami?
I don't know. It felt like it was last year was so mental, and it's hard for me to know if he's gotten to a place where he feels confident again.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks, the whole game for them is confidence.
Change of scenery might help.
It certainly can help.
Again, I'm with you on the offensive line. This is
Miami
Mario
is a
Cristobal.
change of scenery that could also be a distraction too. So
Fair.
It's tough.
But Mario Cristobal, offensive line guy, he is going to have that protection. So, maybe it'll look different too than just Cam Ward trying to run around and keep a play going because that's what their offense was last year.
It was insane.
But yeah, who's he going to throw the ball to? Are they going to be able to run the ball? What does the offense look like? And can he kind of make the right reads, make right decisions? It's going to be fascinating. And I would not want to face a Notre Dame defense right out of the gate, who, by the way, they have a new coordinator in Chris Ash, who we both know well.
Yes.
But I was talking to him this week about this. It's still the Notre Dame defense, right? You're not tweaking or changing that much. You're looking on the margins, but you know that you have incredible talent, especially, really all 3 levels.
Yeah. I mean, people who know Chris Ash and his background, they anticipate that he's a guy who came in to help Notre Dame change up into different blitzes and into some zones. Because Notre Dame played man-to-man a ton last year, and we saw in the national championship, man-to-man got him a little bit when the matchup wasn't great.
He told us in the spring that that was it's that kind of tweaking, right?
So,
it's not really wholesale changes to the defense.
And he can do it too. I played for the guy. He's a phenomenal coordinator.
He's also coming off of a couple years in the NFL where he was like really evaluating personnel in a different way in what he was doing. And so that was really interesting too, of like, how you're watching film, how you're giving individual player evaluations and development. So Miami is the underdog in this game. Did I just lose okay, Notre Dame favored by 2.5 points. I think Notre Dame covers.
I'm going with Notre Dame to cover.
Okay,
as
see,
well.
It's good I picked LSU so that we had a little bit of differences here.
Notre Dame's a more trustworthy team to me right now.
I agree. I also think that they could lose this one, beat A&M. Like, I think they're at the very least splitting these games.
Right.
But that one's at home, and we'll get to that later in this in the season because we have actual games. Okay, so this is rushing the field, which means that we love underdogs. We love when a field rush actually happens, when something unexpected happens, and an underdog wins the game. So every week we are going to pick our underdog pick of the week. If you followed these bets last year, you would have won some money.
Would have won some money.
Just saying.
Yes.
So thank you to DraftKings for these lines. I want you to go first.
Okay.
So give me your underdog pick of the week, Joshua.
I'm going UCLA as my underdog. They are a 5.5 point dog. They're taking on Utah. This one is one that was a little bit of a roll the dice in week one for me. Utah has the culture. They have the standard. Last year
I was going to say, you like Whittingham.
I do.
Whittingham.
I love him. They were not good last year, and they did not finish well last year. They had quarterback problems last year. They bring in Devin Dampier from New Mexico, so hopefully their quarterback problems get better. The issue with that is he turned the football over a lot. The one thing about UCLA for me last year, they played really good defense for a lot of the year. Right, it wasn't the offense had its troubles, but that defense played well most of the year, finished very strong as a team. Now you bring in a guy like Nicole Auerbach to that mix, and I think that's the X factor, where maybe they can throw it over the head of a Utah a little bit. Don't expect them to run it down their throat, but maybe they can get those couple of plays to where they can pull off the upset against a Utah team that I still got questions about because they weren't that good last year.
Plus, UCLA cut out practice access. So therefore, people are probably going to pick Utah.
What is up with West Coast coaches and their vendetta against the media?
They're like, you can't come see us stretch.
The lamestream media.
Ugh. Okay, here is my underdog pick. It's a familiar one. We've seen them pull off games like this before. Toledo plus 9.5 at Kentucky. Yeah. They'll sound familiar because they beat 2 Power 4 teams last year. They beat the bad Mississippi State team, crushed them. Yeah. 41-17 early in the season.
But I thought everybody in the SEC was great.
Yeah, but maybe not against MAC teams. Okay. And then they beat Pitt in that wild bowl game in multiple overtimes. Kentucky is on a bit of a downward trend under Mark Stoops, right? 4-8 last year. One of the worst offenses in the country. Now, they have invested in trying to improve their offensive line. They have issues that they need to address and that they're working on. But continuity is the theme, right? Toledo has so much more continuity, so many guys back, 11 starters back, including their quarterback, Tucker Gleason, who was very good in those 2 wins over the Power 4 teams, averaged 318 yards passing in those games and had 5 touchdown throws to 1 interception in those 2 games combined. So, to me, that sets up pretty well for another Toledo upset because it's a program that knows how to do it. They're not, oh my God, the bright lights, it's too big of a moment. And they literally just beat an SEC team last year. So, when the MAC team beats a power conference team, they fly the flag.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're going to fly the flag.
I love that. I've got a friend of mine who is working with Toledo right now, and he is very excited about this roster that they have. And you mentioned Tucker Gleason, but they got a young quarterback that they're really high on too. So maybe in the next couple years, we might see some more fireworks out of Toledo.
Well, listen, Jason Candle, he wins a lot of games there at Toledo. So those are our underdog picks for the week. Let us know if you actually are betting on them because, again, last year we would have won you guys some money if you followed it up. That will do it, though, for Rushing the Field. Thank you for listening. It's Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. We will see you next after real live football, Joshua. Week 1 action. We are going to have Rushing the Field episodes presented by Xfinity on Saturday nights and Thursdays throughout the season. I can't wait to actually have footage and results and
It's going to be
stats.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, cannot wait. Joshua and I will see you soon.